Hello everybody, Dr. Baird here. So I am going to go ahead and run you through the process of using the National Center for Education Statistics Datalab, specifically within the context of what you will need to do for your first assignment to put together your variable pairings and your proposal to set you up for the project at the end of the semester. So first, what you want to do is you want to try and decide what you're interested in studying. These are all the data sets that are made available to you. This is actually a lot of really good, really complete government data that they just recently put online for public use. So this is a really great resource that only as of probably the past 5 years became even a thing, but really over the course of the past year, they've changed and added a lot. So I'm kind of relearning it as I go along. But first, you need to figure out which data set's relevant to whatever you want to study. So you can go to populations and you can see data that looks at preschool through 12th graders, children and students, post-secondary, aka higher ed students. I would probably keep it restricted to those two because those are what's most relevant to our project. But you can also look by topic as well. And if you click on either a specific population or a specific topic, it will get rid of any data sets that aren't relevant to that topic or that population. So let's say I, in particular, am interested in studying higher ed. So I want to see how either social conditions impact how somebody performs in higher ed, or how somebody performs in higher ed impacts social conditions later in life. So I'm going to go ahead and pick post-secondary, and I'm going to pick students. And so this is going to get rid of, or I guess if it already has, anything that is not relevant to post-secondary students. Although it doesn't seem to be doing it too well. So if you go to, let's try interesting. Well, this should be a feature that works for you. But it is also a good opportunity for me to point out that since a lot of these features have recently been added, there may be some wonkiness to what's going on here with NCS Quick Stats, or NCS Datalab rather, which is now called Datalab. So that's another change. I can still go through each data set and see what the data set consists of. So let's say like I said, am interested in studying college students. I could open up any given data set and I can see what is in that data set. They'll give you a little brief right here in the blue square. They'll tell you who's in it. So about the BPS, this is a study of undergraduate students who are first-time beginning students, and it collects information from students at the end of their first year of undergraduate school. And it also collects students information at year 3 and year 6. So year 6 being presumably when they will have graduated. So I can tell you that that's kind of underselling what's actually in this data set. Quite a lot more is in that data set, including things like transcript information, demographic information, job outcomes. And so really to get into the nitty-gritty about what is in any given data set, you definitely want to go into the codebook. So you can look at a codebook and look at the individual variables by subject and by name. So if you go to, let's do subject, it will load up this little digital book that has all the variables that are within the data set. So you can just browse and see what's there. If you look at any individual variable, it will show you what it is in terms of like what are the options people have to choose, and will show you what kind of variable it is. Categorical variables, just to remind you, are variables like this one in which the answer that somebody gives merely is what category do you fall into, whereas a continuous variable asks for a specific number, like GPA would be a continuous variable, while your academic year, frosh, sophomore, junior, senior, that would be categorical. So let's say I'm interested in studying disability. And let's say we have the two options of whether we want to look at how a social condition impacts education, or how education impacts a social condition. And let's say I'm in particular interested in the first combination. I want to see how the social condition of disability or some sort of disability impacts, we'll say, college GPA. And that will be my education circumstance, or the education variable that is to be impacted by my independent variable. So in finding it, let's say I'm browsing these, and this one actually stands out to me. See, mental health in 2012. So mental health in 2012 is somebody's mental health on a self-rated scale when they first got to college. So it looks like people can either rate their mental health as excellent, as very good, as good, fair, or poor. So let's say I'm interested in using this. So I'm going to go ahead and write this down, and I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot of this, for which on an Apple to take a screenshot is Command-Shift-4 for my project or for my proposal. And I'm going to note that this is a variable that is called MENTH, so presumably shorthand for mental health. So that's going to be my independent variable. But let's find a dependent variable that has to do with an educational outcome to see how that gets affected. So I'm going to go to transcript, because this has information from student transcripts, and it kind of seems halfway invasive, but it's kind of cool that you can literally get information on all the individual respondents' transcripts. So transcript GPA by institution. Now I know that this data set has transfer students, so it has transcript GPA at first institution, at last known institution in case somebody transferred, but we'll go ahead and go with undergraduate GPA at all known institutions, which is probably, for most people, only one institution. So this just says continuous because it's a straight up number. There's no categories here. It asked somebody it actually didn't ask anybody anything. It got their transcripts and it put in what is their GPA. The average is 2.68. There's a standard deviation of 0.89, which you'll understand if you take the stats class with me later in your academic career. But yeah, so this is good. I would go ahead and write down this variable right here, QTGPAALL. So that's going to be my dependent variable. So got that. So it is going to be the case. 1 second, I'll be right with you. It is going to be the case that in order to complete your proposal, you'll also want to give me some, specific details about the data set that you're using. And so you can find a lot of details here just by clicking the expand button. And then also at the same time, if you want more details, you can visit the study homepage. So with that all established, you're ready to move on to doing some analysis. Okay, now that we have our variables, let's go ahead and do some analysis. So I've selected the beginning post-secondary student survey. So I am going to go ahead and click launch. This is where you'll probably be asked to log in. If you don't have your login set up, you probably want to go ahead and do that from the jump. All right, here is where we do our data, or do our analysis in order to get our data. So first we need to select the type of analysis that we're doing. Now I went ahead and made a little cheat sheet for you that's in the assignment instructions that will tell you what type of analysis to do with what type of variables and where to put those variables, either in rows or columns. So we have here, we're going to do a social condition that impacts education outcomes. So our independent variable social condition is the mental health 2012 variable, and our dependent variable on education outcomes is QTGPA all. So anytime that you have a continuous variable, you want to use averages, means, and percents. So select analysis, averages, means, and percents. So I already know what variables I want to use, so I'm just going to go ahead and search them. I mean, you can pick through the variables individually, but since I know my independent variable is the mental health variable, that's MENTH, mental health as of 2012, I'm going to drag this over, and for a independent variable that's categorical and a dependent variable that's continuous, you want to go ahead and put your independent variable, that categorical variable, in the rows. This will come up. It will show you the default categories. Just press save. That's good. The defaults are always fine. And then let's find our dependent variable. All right, so it's transcript, undergraduate GPA at all known institutions. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over to columns. Save, run. It will ask you if you want to use the recommended weights. Go ahead and use the recommended weights. There are other weights, just use the recommended ones. Let it do its thing. And so here's our results. So it does look like there is a relationship between college GPA and somebody's mental health status entering college. It doesn't seem to be all that substantial of a relationship, but it seems that there is something there. Those who rated their mental health as excellent had an average GPA of 2.7. Very good, also 2.7. Good, 2.7. But once you find people who represent or who claim their mental health to be fair or poor, that goes down to 2.5. So we have a little bit of a pattern. It's not a huge pattern, but there's a little bit of a pattern here that we've identified. And then in order to get a chart, just click on charts, bar chart, and there you go. This is what we had represented in the table before, now in chart form. So, all right, now I'm going to show you how to go about doing a variable pairing that is for a educational outcome that impacts life circumstances later on in life. I'm also going to go ahead and show you how to do the analysis with two categorical variables. So I already found the variables that I want. So I was going through the codebooks earlier, and I found a variable that was for persistence en route for a student. In other words, did they graduate by the time they got to 2017, and what type of degree did they graduate with? Now, that's going to be my independent variable, because that is the education outcome. I'm going to see how that impacts the likelihood that somebody has a job that offers them health insurance. And that's going to be based on a dependent variable called JBEN17B. So first, whenever you're doing analysis with two categorical variables, you want to do a different kind of analysis than last time, and you want to do percentage distribution. So we know that it is going to be the case that our independent variable is PROUT6Y, or just 6. Cumulative persistence and attainment anywhere through 2016, 2017. So our independent variable, same as last time, is going to go in the rows. Accept the default categories. And let's find, or sorry, that is going to be our independent variable, not our dependent variable. So that goes in the rows. That is cumulative persistence and attainment. And let's find our dependent variable, which is going to be if somebody's job by the time they get to 2017 offers them health insurance. That's JBEN17B. I'm going to drag my dependent variable over to the columns once more. This is really simple categories. Does your job offer health insurance? Yes or no? Save. And then once again, we're going to go ahead and run it. Use the recommended weights. And this tells us the rates at which people have health insurance depending on if they got a degree and what type of degree they got, if that was the case. Those who had a bachelor's degree, almost 73% of them had health insurance. Those with an associate's degree, about 68% of them had health insurance. Those with a certificate, just under 65% of them had health insurance. Those who had no degree but were still enrolled, they had almost a 72% rate of having health insurance. And it excluded no degree not enrolled because by the time somebody hit 2017, the survey considered them to have left without return. And so for somebody who did not graduate with the degree that they started out to get, they had a rate of insurance of about 66%. So once again, not a huge pattern, but there's still a discernible pattern here. The people with the best outcomes were those who got a bachelor's degree. Those who were still enrolled had pretty high rates of insurance, presumably because they were still on their parents' insurance. But in general, if you didn't get a degree or either got an associate's degree or a certificate rather than a bachelor's degree, that seems to be associated with lower rates of having health insurance. Once again, we have the ability to do a chart. Just choose the chart that makes sense. If we do pie chart, it actually gives you a series of pie charts. This actually makes a lot of sense to me. You could also do a bar chart. That works as well, but it's kind of your own personal taste. Okay, lastly, I'm going to show you something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to use a continuous variable as your independent variable and a categorical variable as your dependent variable. This does change interpretation a little bit. Initially, I was a little apprehensive to make this an option, but I figure it's easy enough. So I'll go ahead and show you. Let's look at the same variables that we were using, but let's use as an independent variable the GPA variable, and let's use as a dependent variable the likelihood that somebody has health insurance. And so what this is going to give us is something that is a little bit different, and it's going to tell us the average GPA for people in each category of the two categories of the insurance variable. So the average GPA for those who do have health insurance later on and those who do not have health insurance later on. So let's put in our independent variable. And the one thing that is really different here is you're going to put your independent variable, in this case, in the columns, which you normally don't do. So QT GPA all. Save. And then we're going to put JBen 17B. JBen 17. Oops. Got to make sure you spell it right. Eligible for health insurance. Yes. And so in this case, we're going to do, because we have a continuous variable involved, we're going to do averages, means, and percents as our analysis. So make sure you have, oh, well, I don't need to clear this because I've already got this set. So just make sure you have averages, means, and percents set to run. And then go ahead and use the recommended weight. Let it do its thing. And it shows us that there is a little bit of a pattern. You do have to interpret this a little bit differently, as you know, you have your dependent or your independent variable in the columns, and your dependent variable in the rows. But that's pretty straightforward. So those who did not have health insurance as of 2017, their average college GPA was 2.6. Those who did, their average college GPA was 2.8. And so that shows that, yeah, there is something of a pattern here. Once again, a small pattern, but definitely a pattern. And you get a chart, go to charts, bar chart, and there you go. So I'll go ahead and leave you with that. That said, the one thing that I have not described is how to use a continuous variable with a continuous variable. That does get complicated. It is possible, but I'll go ahead and say if you want to do that, you should definitely set up some time for me one-on-one, because it is possible, but it takes some additional knowledge. The easiest thing to do is do one of the 3 combinations that I just showed you. Anyways, so yeah, go ahead and go forth, explore, do something that you're legitimately interested in. This is the opportunity for you to explore any sort of issue relevant to society and education that we may otherwise not get a chance to talk about in class. So have fun and choose something that you're legitimately interested in. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to go through this with me, and I'll see y'all in class.